Hi, this is Todd Olthoff, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Adobe recently announced some changes to its Creative Cloud offerings for Lightroom. In previous editions of Lightroom, Adobe offered the desktop version of Lightroom with a mobile companion application that allowed you to sync your photos to your mobile devices so that you could take them with you and even do some edits on the go and have them sync back to your desktop libraries. I did a 3-part series on Lightroom CC that you might want to take a look at if you're not familiar with how Lightroom CC works. With the move to more and more mobile devices, Adobe decided to change their offerings to move more towards a mobile-first solution of Lightroom. In the process, they separated their desktop and cloud-based products, calling them Lightroom Classic for the desktop version and Lightroom CC for the cloud-based version. This, of course, has caused some confusion not only over the names of each of the products, but which to use for your photo workflow. Since it's been a while since the previous series on Lightroom, we thought it would be a good idea to do an update show. In this screencast, we will cover the differences between the two Lightroom options, some of the updates to each, and we'll take a look at some ways you can use either or both versions in your own personal photo workflow.